It's been a few weeks since my way too early 2025 NFL mock draft, so I decided to make another one. I have some extremely bold takes in this mock draft, so stay tuned as I dive into your favorite team and their selection. If you're new, subscribe to the channel as I will be doing draft content all year long. But for now, I'm Keller, and welcome to 2025 NFL Mock Draft 2.0. Enjoy. For this video, I am using PFF's draft order, which has yet to change since I've last done one. But Carolina being first overall does spark some questions, as if they do pick first overall, it might be time to move on from Bryce Young already. But I don't think they will be the worst team, and as a result, they don't take a new quarterback. Instead, they take quite possibly the best player in this draft class in Tennessee edge rusher James Pierce Jr. Without Brian Burns and without a reliable defense, adding Pierce could take their pass rush to a whole new level. The New England Patriots are picking second overall, and this is a pick that I keep wanting to change. I have the same process now though as I did a few weeks ago. I'm going to stray away from taking Will Campbell here, as I do think Caden Wallace might get an opportunity to start next year. So where do I go then? Well, last time I had cornerback Travis Hunter, but after diving into his scouting report, I don't know if he'll go this high. But I will stay at the same position. Give me Michigan corner Will Johnson at number 2. Denver selects third overall here, and I won't take too much time on it as it is the same pick that I made a few weeks ago in my first mock. Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden is the pick here, as the current wide receiver 1 is the leading candidate for the Biletnikoff Award going into the season. But for this pick, we are going to go a different route and make a bold one. This is the first pick that I can say is genuinely bold as it stands. The Tennessee Titans could go with an offensive lineman first round for the third year in a row because, well, they pretty much need it. But they don't take one in this mock. Actually, they flip over to the opposite side of the ball and work on bolstering up the defense. I'm going to focus on the edge rushers here. They could go with Nick Scorton, they could go with one of the 2 Ohio State pass rushers projected to go in the first round, but I'm going to have them taking my favorite prospect as of right now in Penn State edge rusher Abdul Carter. And now we have another pick that is the same for my first mock draft, and I'm sorry Giants fans. I just have to admit that Daniel Jones might not be the answer after this season, and the Giants could potentially get the number 1 overall pick. So Georgia quarterback Carson Beck is the pick here, and while I don't like it too much, he is the current consensus QB1. Moving on to Washington with the 6th overall pick, I won't keep the same player, although it is possible. But what I will do is keep the same position. Offensive line, specifically offensive tackle. I just can't particularly trust a 32-year-old Cornelius Lucas on the left side and a not so great Andrew Wiley on the right side. And those two are guys that Commanders fans did not like my criticisms on last year. You can go check out those comments. And with multiple teams passing on LSU offensive tackle Will Campbell despite their need, the Commanders don't let this fall happen for much longer. I have another semi-bold selection as we move on to the Arizona Cardinals at 7th overall, and while he's not projected to go this high, it is very much possible. I'll just get this out of the way. The Arizona Cardinals are selecting Harold Perkins, a linebacker out of LSU, with the 7th overall pick. Perkins is a linebacker hybrid who has seen success as both an inside linebacker and an edge rusher. Plus, for some reason, the Cardinals always select linebackers that are like this. As for the most recent bit of it, they were able to find success by switching positions for Zaven Collins. I could totally see them doing the same for Harold Perkins as well. Moving on to the 8th pick, the Minnesota Vikings have a team that I'm just not too confident in going into 2024. JJ McCarthy will have a learning curve, the rest of the offense isn't that great, and the defense, wow, they don't have a lot of talent. And that's why they go for a defensive player with this pick. It's honestly just a matter of what position they go for. Last time around, I went with cornerback, but this time around, I'm going to switch to the defensive line and take Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham. Vegas picks here at number 9, and they have a big possibility of taking the second quarterback off the board. Besides, that's what they did last time with Quinn Ewers, but I'm not going to do it this time. Instead, I am going to stick on the offensive side of the ball and pick a player that will help either Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, or a new offseason signee. You might be thinking of wide receiver, but I'm thinking of something different. Give me Texas offensive tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. with this selection. Rounding out the top 10, the Seattle Seahawks come in as a very sneaky quarterback team, and I will continue to repeat that. I will also continue to say that if they didn't take one in the 2024 NFL draft, I don't see them taking one in 2025 either. Instead of a quarterback, I am going to give them exactly what I gave them in my first mock draft. That player is Notre Dame cornerback Benjamin Morrison. The New Orleans Saints have the 11th overall pick in this draft, and they are also a team that could take a quarterback. But once again, I don't think there will be a lot of takers in this quarterback class, and the Saints also won't be a taker. I think they go for the same route that Las Vegas just went for, and that is taking an offensive player to help whoever their quarterback may be next year and potentially shoot for a player in 2026. This surrounding player is Arizona wideout Tetairoa McMillan, who has a chance to shine in a new conference. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They are actually my personal favorite to win the NFC South for the second year in a row. Betting odds absolutely love the Falcons this year, and I can't really disagree with that. If they give Tampa the 12th overall pick by winning the division, this is a huge spot for them, especially if they can get a high impact player. I'm not talking about your normal impact. I'm talking about someone who can play both offense and defense. This is another bold selection, not because of how high a player was taken, but because of how low Colorado cornerback Travis Hunter fell. The Indianapolis Colts are picking 13th overall, and in my first mock draft, I had them selecting a cornerback. That's because their secondary is lacking star power. Their best player in the secondary is pretty clearly Kenny Moore, and after him it's Julian Blackmon. And while Blackmon isn't bad at all, I don't think it's worth for him to be the best safety on your roster, which is why instead of cornerback this time, they go with safety, and they take Georgia safety Malachi Starks 13th overall. At number 14, the Pittsburgh Steelers have nailed the last couple of drafts that they've had. But this time around, it's going to be harder. They filled in a lot of positions with a lot of youth, which means they have to start looking to replace some of their older veterans. So they need to figure out which positions need the depth. And I think this may start by adding a defensive tackle to potentially replace Cam Hayward. I wouldn't be shocked if that was the direction they took. Kentucky's Deontay Walker is the best option after Mason Graham, so that's who Pittsburgh goes with here. I'm going to return to the bold takes here as we move on to the Los Angeles Rams, who pick 15th overall. This Rams team has a lot of holes on their roster, but with a great quarterback and a great coach, they're probably going to be good again. But their defense needs significant upgrades, especially after Raheem Morris left to be Atlanta's head coach. And that's where the boldness comes in. I'm not fond of this linebacker group, and there aren't really any good options here. That's according to PFF. I really like Clemson linebacker Barrett Carter, and he has the potential to be my linebacker 1 once the draft rolls around. Jacksonville is now on the clock at 16th overall, and I'm going to stick to the secondary just like I did in the first draft. Even though Malachi Starks isn't on the board like he was when Jacksonville picked him in my first mock, I just can't trust these starting DBs. They might have good depth, but they need the starters too. So I'm going to do the opposite of what Indy did. The Jags go from safety to cornerback and take Arizona corner Tacario Davis at pick 16. Cleveland at 17th overall actually has a consensus pick of Oklahoma State running back Ollie Gordon II, which I think is wild when you have Nick Chubb. Now, I can't say too much about that consensus pick though, as the pick that I have is pretty bold in itself. I'm not liking what I see out of Deshaun Watson, as if he continues to play in Cleveland like he already has, that trade might go down as the worst ever. And that's what I'm projecting in this video. Give me Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers with the 17th overall pick here. At 18th overall, the Chicago Bears decide to go with defensive line, just like I thought they should have in the first round in the 2024 draft. Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens were reaches in 2023, and while I do hope they prove me wrong, I'm just going to say they don't. So they go ahead and take Georgia defensive tackle Michael Williams here at number 18. I think we should continue this defensive line route as we move on to the Los Angeles Chargers at 19th overall. They have an intriguing defensive line, but their defensive tackle group just isn't up to par in my opinion. They took Tuli Tuipulotu in the 2023 draft, so it wouldn't shock me if they went a similar route in 2025 and took Ole Miss defensive lineman Princely Umanmielen. What I mean by that is a player who can definitely play both off the edge and on the interior D-line. We don't really know where he will play best yet. On to pick number 20, where the Houston Texans don't have a lot of needs, especially needs that need to be addressed in the first round. I said that this team needed to extend Nico Collins in my last mock draft, and now that they have, I think they can narrow this down to the defense. That's why I had them taking the second straight defensive tackle off the board. This time it's Michigan's Kenneth Grant. I won't spend too much time on the New York Jets at pick 21, as I do think they need to focus on the surround sound whether Aaron Rodgers is quarterback or not next season. And they can get a lethal receiving threat at the tight end position if they take Michigan's Colston Loveland. And that's who they end up taking here, being the second straight Michigan player here. The Atlanta Falcons are on the clock now, and with a new quarterback and a new coach, it's going to be a wild ride for them in 2024. If Cousins is truly here for the long run, or even if Penix has to step up, I think the Falcons need to narrow this down to the wide receiver group and surround their quarterback. So with the 22nd pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Oregon wide receiver Evan Stewart. The Miami Dolphins are going to take a guy that I have looked at pretty recently, but I have yet to talk about him outside of just a brief mention. At 23rd overall, the Dolphins don't have a lot of needs, and how I described the Texans earlier is how I would describe the Dolphins here. But they could use some help on the interior defensive line. That's where Arkansas defensive tackle Landon Jackson comes in, and he is the pick here. In the 2024 NFL Draft, the Packers failed to address the secondary, at least in the capacity that I thought they should have addressed it in. And I thought cornerback could have been their first round pick. Instead, it's their first round pick in my 2025 mock. Ohio State cornerback Denzel Burke will be the first Ohio State player taken off the board with a group that could possibly break the draftee record. I made a video on that, so go check that out. Last time around, I made a bold take that the Dallas Cowboys cannot agree on a contract with Dak Prescott, and they ended up selecting Shedeur Sanders in that mock. So what happens if they do get that extension signed? They have to make Dak even happier by adding a skill player. Could be wideout, could be O-line, but I think it's going to be running back. And here they take Ohio State running back Quinshon Judkins. Philadelphia is going to stick with the direction that I had them going in from my first mock draft, but it's a different player. They went with LSU offensive tackle Emory Jones Jr. in my last mock, but this time around, someone has passed him in the consensus rankings. That player is Alabama offensive lineman Tyler Booker, and he could play on the inside in the NFL, but for now, let's count him as a tackle. The Detroit Lions are picking 27th overall here, and just like the Texans and Dolphins, they don't have a lingering need that they absolutely should address here. Yet, part of that does have to do with the talent available, so they're going to reach for a player here. That reach involves the first interior offensive lineman off the board. That player is going to be Georgia guard Ernest Green. And we're going to go with a second straight Georgia player as we move on to 28th overall with the Cincinnati Bengals. And it might not be the Georgia player you are thinking of. This guy is just ranked inside the top 100 at number 98. And it fits a need for this team. I might be really high on Georgia tight end Oscar Delp going into the season, and if he comes out like I think he will, don't be shocked if they go with him here. Buffalo picks at number 29, and after losing Stephon Diggs, they desperately need a wideout. Sure, they could use an O-lineman or a defensive playmaker, but I don't think they have a bigger need than wide receiver at this point. And that's why they take Ohio State's Emeka Egbuka with the 29th overall pick. The Baltimore Ravens are selecting 30th overall here, and they do have a few needs scattered all around. This comes after they lost a decent chunk of players in free agency, especially on the defensive line. That's where edge rusher Nick Skorton comes into play here, and the incoming Texas A&M transfer is the pick here. The San Francisco 49ers stick with a similar spot at 31st overall. I've been mocking an O-lineman to them for so long. Purdy has suffered many injuries throughout his career, and the 49ers have yet to build a consistent O-line around him anyways, which is why in this mock, the team goes for the best offensive tackle available, and they take LSU offensive tackle Emory Jones Jr., the right side complement to Campbell. And to wrap things up, the Kansas City Chiefs are favored to three-peat at Super Bowl 59. And while I could see it happening, even if the Chiefs have some regular season struggles, they do have some needs that they have to fill. And I don't think they'll end up in this spot. But if they do, they will still be able to take a solid player in Ohio State edge rusher JT Tuimoloau. Well, that is my second mock draft of the 2025 NFL draft season. Do you agree with my mock? What would you change? Let me know in the comments section below. Wait, are you not subscribed yet? Well, do it now. I release content like this all the time and would really appreciate your support. I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and I will see you all next time.